You spend, maybe 20 years climbing the corporate ladder. You survive the endless restructurings, you navigate all that labyrinth of office politics, and you finally secure the impressive title.
Right.
And the salary to match. But then you realize you kind of just want to fire your boss.
Oh, yeah. You become officially a corporate refugee.
Exactly. A corporate refugee. You want out of the traditional corporate path, but then there's this massive dilemma. Like, what do you actually do with 2 decades of high-level strategic knowledge?
Right, because you can't just, you don't want to just go manage a massive retail supply chain or something totally unrelated to your skill set.
No, exactly. You want to change,
Yeah.
but you want to change that actively leverages that executive brain trust you spent your entire adult life building.
It is a really profound transition period for a lot of people. I mean, the desire for autonomy is incredibly strong at that stage in a career. But the prospect of starting from absolute zero, staring at a blank whiteboard, trying to invent a completely new product or service from scratch, that is usually what keeps highly capable people trapped in jobs they've totally outgrown.
Because they just need a vehicle for their expertise.
Yeah, really. They need a proven vehicle.
And that is actually the core of our deep dive today. We are unpacking a highly unique franchise model that is tailored specifically for that transitioning executive mindset. We are looking at FocalPoint Business Coaching.
Which is such an interesting model.
It really is. This is a franchise that doesn't involve managing heavy retail inventory or, signing 10-year commercial leases for massive brick-and-mortar spaces. It is a model completely designed to monetize your own brain power.
Yeah, and that's key because the word franchise usually triggers images of, massive overhead and huge employee rosters. But business coaching as a franchise model fundamentally rewrites those expectations. In this scenario, you are the product.
Right.
Your hard-earned business acumen, when paired with a very specific globally tested system, is the actual commodity being sold here.
But, if I'm an executive evaluating this, the whole feel-good aspect of helping people doesn't pay my mortgage.
Fair point, yeah.
To figure out if this is a viable addition to a portfolio or a smart career pivot, we really need to apply some rigorous analysis. We need to understand the psychology of the target client, dissect the mechanics of the coaching framework, and really interrogate the raw unit economics.
Absolutely. Because you cannot evaluate a business model where you are the primary operator without a deep, deep understanding of the end consumer. If you aren't selling a physical widget, what exactly is the market demanding from you?
So let's start right there. Who is the actual client for a FocalPoint franchisee? Because looking at the data, it says franchisees target business owners who have hit something called the growth point.
Yeah, the growth point. And, it sounds like a milestone you'd celebrate with champagne.
Right, we hit the growth point, pop the corks.
Exactly. But in reality, it is a period of intense operational crisis. If you think about the life cycle of a small to mid-sized business, phase 1 is purely survival. The owner is just working around the clock to figure out their core offer, secure some loyal customers, and, keep the lights on.
It's chaotic.
Extremely chaotic, but there is a clear, singular goal, which is just don't go bankrupt. And eventually they achieve that. They stabilize. They have a real viable business.
Wait, hold on. If they survived all that startup chaos and they have a real business with steady revenue, shouldn't they be coasting at that point? Why is this growth point characterized as a struggle instead of a victory lap?
Because the sheer force of will that got them out of the survival phase becomes the exact thing that traps them in the growth phase.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the business is now in constant motion, but the owner starts to realize that despite working, 80-hour weeks, the company's profit margin and their overall footprint aren't actually expanding anymore. They are essentially trapped in a complex machine of their own creation.
I see.
As the FocalPoint model categorizes it, they don't need more hustle anymore. Hustle has completely depreciated in value. What they need is horsepower.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like hitting a plateau at the gym, right?
Yeah.
The heavy lifting that got the business owner their initial success is actually just causing muscle fatigue now.
That's a great way to put it.
They need a completely different training regimen to get to the next level. You can't just type faster. You need a fundamentally different operating system.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. And to fix that operating system, the FocalPoint framework trains its franchisees to target 3 specific growth engines that are usually the source of all this operational fatigue.
And those are time, money, and team, right?
Exactly. Time, money, and team.
Let's break those down operationally, because if I'm buying this franchise, I really need to know what I'm actually diagnosing when I walk into a client's office. Like, how does a time engine misfire?
Well, a misfiring time engine usually looks like a CEO who is still doing $20 an hour tasks.
Oh yeah, we've all seen that.
Right. They are personally reviewing minor expense reports or handling low-level customer complaints instead of focusing on strategic acquisitions or high-ticket sales. They are incredibly busy, but they are highly unproductive.
And what about the team engine?
So the team engine clogs when an owner just hires bodies instead of building a leadership pipeline. There's no accountability structure, no clear KPIs, so the owner just ends up micromanaging every single employee.
Which defeats the purpose of hiring them.
Exactly. They've expanded their payroll, but they haven't actually expanded their company's capability. And then the money engine often misfires through just poor cash flow management. A business might be generating millions in gross revenue, but due to terrible pricing strategies or bloated overhead, the actual profit margin is just razor thin.
But, this brings up a massive logistical hurdle for the potential franchisee.
How so?
Well, let's say I am that corporate refugee we talked about. I spent 15 years as a VP of sales in the software industry. I buy a FocalPoint franchise. Tomorrow, I walk into a local manufacturing plant or, say, a regional commercial plumbing company to pitch my coaching services. How can I possibly fix the logistical engines of an industry I have literally never worked in?
That's the beauty of this specific model. You don't need to be an expert in commercial plumbing to coach a commercial plumber. You aren't teaching them the technical skills of their trade. You are teaching them the mechanics of running a business.
Okay, that distinction is crucial.
Yeah, and you are not doing it armed only with your own resume either. You are pairing your executive background with the proprietary coaching techniques of Brian Tracy. That is the structural backbone of this entire franchise.
And for the listener who might not be totally immersed in the professional development world, Brian Tracy is a foundational figure. I mean, he has spent decades analyzing the behavioral psychology and the operational habits that differentiate stagnant companies from hyper-successful ones.
Exactly. When you buy into this franchise, you are acquiring the rights to utilize that globally recognized brand and its proven structured content.
So you're not reinventing the wheel.
Not at all. You take your specific background, whether that is in revenue generation, strategic planning, financial management, operations, and you layer it over the Tracy framework. The framework provides the diagnostic tools. You provide the executive intuition to read the results and implement the cure.
Okay, let's talk about the results of that cure. Because reading through the source information, some of these numbers honestly look like typos.
I know exactly which ones you're talking about.
Right. There is a specific example of a coach named Phil Gilks in Alberta, Canada, who is credited with increasing a business's annual revenue by 7,500%. I mean, I have to push back here. How is a 7,500% increase mechanically possible just from coaching?
I know, it sounds completely impossible until you understand the compounding nature of fixing those three engines simultaneously.
Okay, walk me through that.
Let's say an owner is spending 80% of their week putting out administrative fires. A coach steps in and uses specific prioritization frameworks, like Tracy's concept of tackling the most difficult, highest revenue-generating task first thing in the morning before ever checking an inbox.
Just structurally changing their day.
Right. Suddenly, the owner has freed up 20 hours a week, and they use those 20 hours to target enterprise-level contracts instead of just residential ones.
So the average ticket size jumps.
Massively. And the sales cycle shortens because the coach also helped them implement a structured sales funnel. When you align time, money, and team all at the same time, the revenue doesn't just grow linearly, it multiplies.
Ah, so the coach isn't performing magic. They are just stripping away the operational friction that was artificially capping the company's growth to begin with.
Precisely. And that translates into staggering financial metrics. You see similar impact stories from coaches all across their global network. People like ICO Teze in Texas or Bo Ormrod in England. The franchisees actually share these insights with each other, creating this massive decentralized brain trust.
But what's interesting to me is that while the financial metrics, like a 7,500% return, are what gets splashed across the headlines, the day-to-day reality of the service seems to be something else entirely. It looks like the thing that creates long-term client retention is actually the emotional relief the coach provides.
That is absolutely true.
Which is an interesting pivot. We're talking about hard-nosed corporate executives buying a franchise.
Yeah.
And you're pointing to emotional relief as the primary retention tool.
I am. Because the CEO role, especially at that turbulent growth point, is notoriously isolating. You can't really vent your deepest fears about payroll to your employees, right?
No, definitely not. That would cause a panic.
And your spouse is likely exhausted from hearing about the business at the dinner table every night. The testimonials from FocalPoint clients repeatedly highlight the mental clarity the coach brings.
I do see that in the data. The feedback is remarkably personal. There's a client named Deanna R. who worked with Coach Jim Diebold, and her praise wasn't about a spreadsheet at all. She stated that Jim is the person who will listen to your goals, see through the problems that bog you down, and map out a timely strategy to solve them.
Yeah, see through the problems. That is the objective executive lens in action. When you are the owner, you are often too emotionally attached to your own inefficient processes to see the flaws.
You're too close to the painting to see the picture.
Exactly.
There is another striking example from Kelly M., who is a client of Coach Dulcie Lowen in New Hampshire. Kelly explicitly noted that Dulcie brought clarity and accountability, but also emphasized that Dulcie brought, quote, so much humor, and reminded her to value herself without reservation.
Which is huge for a burnt-out owner.
It is. And Peter G., who worked with Coach Adam Thompson, said Adam helped him cut through the fog.
That mental fog is the universal symptom of a clogged time engine. A great business coach acts as an unbiased sounding board. They hold the owner accountable to their own stated goals without any hidden agenda or, office politics.
Because they're outside of all that.
Right. They're the only person in the room who isn't trying to sell the owner something or ask for a raise.
Okay, so the value proposition for the end client is highly compelling. The emotional and strategic return on investment is obvious. But let's look at this through the lens of the person writing the check to buy the franchise.
The unit economics.
Right. If I'm transitioning out of a C-suite role, does the math of this specific franchise model actually make sense?
And it does, because the unit economics of business coaching are completely detached from traditional franchising metrics, which is exactly why it appeals so heavily to the corporate professional.
The most glaring difference to me is the overhead. Like, if you buy a traditional brick-and-mortar franchise, you are signing a massive commercial lease, securing permits, buying heavy equipment, and hiring a small army of hourly workers before you ever sell a single item.
It's a huge capital layout up front.
Huge.
Yeah.
But with FocalPoint, this is essentially a home-based laptop lifestyle model, right?
Totally. The barrier to entry is radically altered.
Yeah.
You are not managing a physical supply chain or, watching physical inventory gather dust on a shelf. This operational agility is largely why the brand has successfully scaled to over 250 units since it began franchising back in 2004.
Let's get into the raw investment numbers then. The total initial investment range to launch a FocalPoint franchise sits between $71,900 and $375,000.
And if you compare that to a traditional brick-and-mortar franchise where, a $2 million net worth requirement and $1 million in liquid cash is often just the baseline just to get a phone interview with the franchisor, it's night and day.
Oh, for sure.
For FocalPoint, the liquid cash requirement is a highly accessible $75,000 to $300,000, with a net worth requirement of just $200,000 to $750,000.
So for a successful executive rolling over a 401k or leveraging a severance package, that is a very manageable entry point.
Extremely manageable.
But, as an analytical buyer, I'm always looking for the catch.
Naturally.
In traditional franchising, the franchisor usually takes a percentage of your gross sales as a royalty. So if you grind for years and finally build a multi-million-dollar operation, your royalty payments skyrocket. It can feel like a punishing tax on your own success. But looking at the financial data for this, the royalty fee is not a percentage.
No, it is a flat fee, and that single structural detail fundamentally shifts the psychology of the franchise owner.
Wait, a flat fee. It says the royalty fee ranges from just $500 to $1,950 per month. That seems kind of counterintuitive from a franchisor's perspective, doesn't it? If I am the franchisor, wouldn't I want a cut of my top performer's massive upside? What keeps them invested in my success if my growth doesn't increase their monthly check?
Well, it is a highly calculated strategy based on network retention and the specific psychology of the executive buyer.
Okay, unpack that for me.
When a highly competent professional leaves the corporate world, they are usually leaving because they are tired of their intense labor enriching someone else disproportionately. They are tired of the CEO getting a massive bonus while they get, a modest cost of living raise.
Right. They want their effort to correlate directly, dollar for dollar, with their own wealth creation.
Exactly. If FocalPoint took a 10% cut of a coach's $1 million book of business, that high-performing franchisee would eventually feel penalized for their own success. They might even just leave the system entirely and go independent.
That makes total sense.
So by utilizing a flat, predictable monthly fee, the franchisor aligns the incentives perfectly. They provide the initial training, the Brian Tracy framework, the ongoing mentorship, and the global brand authority. You pay them for that infrastructure.
Yeah.
But the upside, the massive margins from landing a six-figure corporate coaching contract, that stays entirely in your pocket.
That is a brilliant retention mechanism. It allows the franchisee to truly scale their income based entirely on their own bandwidth and expertise. You aren't capped by the physical square footage of a retail space, and your profit margins actually improve as your revenue goes up, rather than being dragged down by variable royalty percentages.
It really is a game changer for high performers. And that leads us to the operational reality of client acquisition. Because a really common concern for executives looking at this is, look, I am a strategist, not a cold caller. How do I actually get clients?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question. An executive isn't going to stand on a street corner spinning a sign to get business owners in the door.
No, definitely not. The acquisition strategy mirrors the executive background. Franchisees leverage local chambers of commerce, B2B networking events, and their own extensive corporate contacts.
So it's relationship-based.
Entirely. They aren't selling $10 widgets. They are building high-trust, peer-to-peer relationships with other CEOs. When a FocalPoint coach walks into a room, they carry the gravitas of their corporate career combined with the globally recognized authority of the Brian Tracy brand. That combination opens doors that traditional marketing simply cannot.
It is a very clean, highly logical exchange of value then. You bring the drive, your local network, and the analytical mind. The franchisor brings the diagnostic tools, the brand, and the support structure. Together, you go out into the local market, find those business owners suffocating under the weight of their own operational fog, and you basically rebuild their engines.
And when you step back and evaluate the broader societal impact of this specific franchise model, there is a secondary layer of value that goes far beyond just personal wealth creation.
What do you mean by secondary value?
Well, if you buy a traditional retail franchise, you provide a localized service, you create a few hourly jobs, and you build personal equity. And that is a solid, completely respectable path. But when you buy a business coaching franchise, you act as an economic multiplier. You create a massive ripple effect throughout your entire local ecosystem.
Because you aren't just impacting the four walls of your own business, you are actively shaping the trajectory of 10 or 20 other companies simultaneously.
Precisely. When a coach steps in and helps a local logistics company or, say, a regional marketing firm survive that perilous growth point, the impact is exponential. By helping that business scale efficiently, the coach is indirectly responsible for preserving existing local jobs and generating the capital needed to create new ones.
You are literally fortifying the economic foundation of your own city.
You are. And you are mitigating the devastating human cost of entrepreneurial failure. I mean, think about the sheer emotional trauma of a failing business.
It's immense.
By clearing the fog for that CEO, by providing objective strategy and relentless accountability, a coach might literally be saving marriages that have been pushed to the absolute brink by financial stress. You are elevating the standard of living for the entire community.
That entirely reframes the conversation. It isn't just about escaping the corporate world or finding a business with a flat royalty structure and low overhead, though obviously those are incredible strategic advantages. It is really about deploying your hard-earned knowledge for something that has a tangible, immediate impact.
Absolutely.
You are no longer sitting in a sanitized boardroom debating incremental percentage points on a national spreadsheet. You are in the trenches with real business owners, utilizing your executive skill set to fundamentally change the reality of their lives.
Which leaves us with a highly provocative question for any seasoned professional listening to this analysis today.
I love a provocative question. Let's hear it.
We spend decades building our resumes, acquiring strategic insights, and mastering complex organizational dynamics. But what could your executive experience actually achieve if it was unleashed directly onto your local business ecosystem? What could you build if you had the right framework to deploy that knowledge?
That is the exact question you need to be asking yourself today. You don't have to be a corporate refugee forever. You can take all of that accumulated strategic horsepower, step completely off the corporate hamster wheel, and become the actual engine of growth for your entire community.